Hey, you. You're finally awake.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. We're back to the Super Nintendo today and we are looking at sports games. Yes, the console and many consoles like it have a lot of sports games. Some people like sports games, some people hate them. But today I am looking at some of the best sports games that came out for the Super Nintendo. As always, if you agree with this list, let me know in the comments. If there's ones I've not talked about, let me know, and I want to hear about your memories playing some of these games. As always, if you think I deserve it, please hit that like button, as that is what really helps the channel grow. You can also hit that subscribe and notification bell as we make our way to nearly 8,000 subscribers. We've got the weekly podcast, and you can also join the Smut Squad in our free Discord, and the link in the description below. Right, let's get into it, shall we? Some of the best sports games for the Super Nintendo. NBA Jam Tournament Edition. Now, NBA Jam Tournament Edition on the Super Nintendo stands out as the king of polished powerhouse. Whilst the original NBA Jam was a groundbreaking hit, Tournament Edition took a foundation and squeezed every possible drop of performance out of the Super Nintendo, creating what many fans consider the most balanced and visually vibrant home version of the era, although we do have the 32X version which we talked about last video, but that's another thing. It's a high-octane 2-on-2 basketball game where fouls don't exist and gravity is merely a suggestion. The roster features mid-90s legends minus Jordan and Jack due to licensing, and the goal is to beat all 27 NBA teams to become the world champion. 27? That's just so random. Such a random number of teams. This version utilises the console's superior colour palette and Mode 7 hardware to deliver a bright, arcade-quality aesthetic that feels significantly richer than other 16-bit ports. Tournament introduced an expanded roster. There was increased players, mid-game substitutions, and injury stats that make shoving a tactical risk. The Super Nintendo can be considered the gold standard for many retro gamers because it feels like a premium handcrafted experience rather than a rushed port. The Super Nintendo is famous for its Mode 7 scaling and rotation. In NBA Jam Tournament Edition, this tech is used to handle the scaling of the players in the court. When you launch into a super dunk, the camera zooms and tilts with fluidity, and that adds that cinematic weight to every rim-rocking slam. It makes the court feel like a 3D space rather than a 2D flat plane. The Super Nintendo's hardware allowed for hundreds of colours on screen simultaneously. The result is a game that looks like a Saturday morning cartoon. The polished wood of the court is a genuine shine, the jerseys are neon bright, and the fire effects when a player scores 3 baskets in a row are deep glowing orange that look spectacular on the CRT screen. One of the best quality of life features on the Super Nintendo version is the controller layout. By default, the L and R shoulder buttons are mapped to turbo, which allows you to keep your thumb free for passing, shooting, and while your index fingers handle the speed boosts. It is arguably the most ergonomic and pro way to play the game, leading to much tighter execution of complex dunks. And thanks to the Super Nintendo's Sony designed sound trip, the audio is really crisp. Tim Kittrow's legendary commentary, "He's heating up and it's in the shoes," sounds clear and punchy. The music is a funky, bass-heavy 90s masterpiece that sets the perfect energetic tone for a high-speed matchup. This version is packed with special features that you can toggle in the menu. You've got Juice Mode, which increases the game up to 4 times the speed for absolute chaos. Hotspots, random circles appear on the floor, sink a shot from one of those and earn 9 points in a single go. And power-up icons, which are physical icons appear on the court that grant an instant on-fire status, super speed, or even bomb explosions that knock everyone down. Pretty sure all of those be banned. The Super Nintendo version is a time capsule of the 1994 pop culture. By entering secret codes at the initial screens, you can unlock a surreal team of hidden characters, including the Beastie Boys, the Clintons, Prince Charles, and the Mortal Kombat cast, which include Reptile, Scorpion, and Sub-Zero. NBA Tournament Edition on the Super Nintendo is a definitive party game for the system. It took the raw intensity of the arcade and polished it with a home console comforts like battery pack stat saving and deeper tournament structure. It's fast, loud, and remains one of the most accessible sports games ever made. Even if you don't like basketball, you'll be punching a mascot in the face and jumping 30 feet in the air. Super Punch-Out! Now I love Super Punch-Out! While many remember the NES predecessor for its charm and puzzle boxing rhythm, the Super Nintendo sequel is a different beast entirely. It's faster, weirder, and trades the underdog story for a high-octane arcade experience that feels like you're living in a Saturday morning cartoon, like you really are in this game. You play as a blonde-haired protagonist, although it's often called Little Mac, but it's weird. Little Mac don't have blonde hair. You can argue that in the comments. And you're climbing the ranks of the WVBA. You move through the minor, major, and world circuits, plus a brutal hidden special circuit. You see your character from behind, but he's translucent. This wireframe style transparency allows you to see the massive expressive sprites of your opponents without your own character blocking the view. It's a game of pattern recognition and tells. Every opponent has a unique animation that signals the next move, and your job is to dodge, duck, and block exactly the right millisecond to create an opening for a counterattack. Super Punch-Out succeeds at leading into the super in its title. Everything is bigger, faster, and more over the top. The biggest mechanical shift is a power meter at the bottom of the screen. As you land punches, the meter fills. Once it's flashing, you can unleash devastating super punches, uppercuts, hooks, or the rapid punch flurry. However, if you get hit, your meter resets. This creates a high-stakes perfect run mentality where you want to stay aggressive but can't afford a single mistake. The 16-bit hardware allowed for massive detailed sprites that burst with personality. The opponents aren't just boxers, they're just archetypes. You got Bear Hugger, a massive Canadian lumberjack who literally tries to crush you, he's hilarious. Dragon Chan, a martial artist who breaks the boxing rules by kicking you in the face, yet that's not allowed. I want to argue many of these things in this game aren't allowed. And Mass Muscle, a luchador who spits blinding mist in your eyes to scramble your screen. Again, cool mechanic, but kinda not allowed. Unlike the NES version, which felt more like a turn-based rhythm game, the Super Nintendo version is fast. Opponents recover quickly, and their patterns can change mid-fight. The introduction of the dizzy threshold, where landing consecutive hits stuns the enemy, encourages you to be relentless. It's less about waiting for your turn and more about taking your turn. When you land a heavy punch in this game, you feel it. The screen shakes, the sound effects are great, and the opponent's faces contort in hilarious ways. The knockdown animations like Mad Clown sprawling across the ring or Narcissus Prince looking horrified when you hit his beautiful face provide instant satisfying rewards for your skill. Because the game has a battery pack save, it keeps track of your fastest KO times for every single fighter. This turns Super Punch-Out into an early favourite for speedrunners. Beating a boss is one thing, beating him under 10 seconds by finding the hidden instant KO trigger is a whole different level of mastery. And long before he was the world famous voice of Mario, Charles Martinet provided the voice samples for some of the boxers and the announcers in the game. Hearing the referee shout knockout or the boxers taunting you gave also that game an arcade soul that feels alive. Super Punch-Out is a masterclass in action puzzle design. It strips away the management and sounds of real boxing and replaces them with pure concentrated boss fights. It's a colourful, challenging, and possesses a one more try quality that allowed it to age more gracefully than many other sports games of its era. NHL 94. NHL 94 is the king of the digital atmosphere. While the 16-bit era was defined by the console wars between Sega and Nintendo, NHL 94 is often cited as a game that brought both sides together. I know there are other NHL games and you can shout at me in the comments. It's widely considered the greatest sports game ever made, not just for its time, but with pick up and play physics that many games today can't manage. This is the first entry to feature the full NHL license alongside the NHL Players Association. You get the real teams, real logos, and legendary players. This is the debut of the most famous move in sports gaming history. By passing the puck and hitting the chute just before it reaches the receiver, you could unleash a devastating one-time slap shot. While real ice is white, NHL on the Super Nintendo is famous for its distinct, sterile, cool blue tint that became a visual hallmark of the series. The Super Nintendo version is the audiophiles edition of the game, focused on a cleaner aesthetic and a more technical control scheme. The Super Nintendo version utilised its superior sound trip to create an incredibly authentic arena experience. It features unique, high-fidelity organ music that changed based on the home team stadium. Hearing the brass bonanza for the Hartford Whalers or the classic Let's Go Rangers chant provided a sense of place that made you feel like you were actually at the rink. God help if you ever heard UK football chants. That's all I'll say, they are horrific. The Super Nintendo version took advantage of the L and R buttons for defense control. This allowed you to manually cycle through your defenders to pick the exact player you want to control, rather than just the computer giving you a guy closest to the puck. It turned the game from a frantic chase into a tactical game of cutting off the lanes. One of the most pro features of the Super Nintendo is the X button. Any moment you can tap the X to take manual control of your goalie. This created legendary mind game moments in local multiplayer where you could manually slide your goalie to rob your friend of a sure thing goal, although you've clearly never seen FIFA 98 The Road to World Cup with our goalies. That is pure joy. The skating in NHL 94 is wonky in the best way possible. Players have a sense of weight, and they don't just stop on a dime. You have to learn to swoop into turns and use your momentum to deliver hits. If you miss a body check, your player will fly helplessly across the ice, leaving you out of position. It's high risk, high reward gameplay. And the Super Nintendo version is packed with Easter egg details that made it feel premium. You've got the glass break, and if you hit a slap shot hard enough from the right angle, and the pixel would shatter, forcing a whistle. You've got the hat trick, and if a player scores 3 goals, the crowd actually throws hats onto the ice. And the Zamboni. During the intermissions, you can watch the little Zamboni crawl across the screen, a small but beloved piece of hockey soul. Thankfully, Deadpool is not riding one. And because the game used real stats, certain players are essentially cheat codes. Jeremy Roenick on the Chicago Blackhawks is the most famous example. He's fast, physical, and almost impossible to knock off the puck. It created a house rule in many 90s basements that no one is allowed to be Chicago, or no one's allowed to be our job. That's the main rule. NHL 94 on the Super Nintendo is the perfect marriage of arcade speed and simulation depth. It removed the fighting found in previous years to focus entirely on the flow of the game. It's a masterpiece of tight programming where the passing, hitting, and shooting all feel exactly as they should. International Superstar Soccer Deluxe, or ISS. While FIFA did have the licenses and the isometric view, Konami's ISS Deluxe had the soul of the sport. It is the direct answer to the legendary Pro Evo series and is widely considered the most advanced, playable, and realistic depiction of football on the Super Nintendo. It's an arcade-style simulation featuring 36 national teams. While it didn't have the real players' names, the players were clearly modelled after their real-life counterparts. Unlike FIFA's diagonal tilt, ISS uses side-on broadcaster perspective with a large detailed sprites that allowed for more precise dribbling and passing. Now this was an upgraded version of the original ISS, adding more teams, better animations, and a much needed strategy menu. ISS took the chaos of football and turned it into a game of genuine skill and tactical depth. Because Konami couldn't use the real names, they created their own folklore. Algio, the Brazilian striker, became more famous to some fans than the real Ronaldo or Romario. These players had distinct stats, and you could actually feel the difference in speed, shot power, and curve between a star striker and a bench warmer. I was never a bench warmer, I still aren't a bench warmer. I'm a goalkeeper, I'm always in. For the first time on the console, you can actually manage your team like a coach. You can change formations mid-game, set specific players to man-mark the opponent's star, and adjust your team's mentality from all-out attack to park the bus Jose Mourinho style. It rewarded players who understood the sport, not just those who could mash buttons. The sprites in ISS Deluxe were massive for the Super Nintendo. Players would stumble when tackled, perform bicycle kicks, and lean into their headers. The ball physics were also a revelation. The ball wasn't just glued to the player's foot, it had its own momentum, allowing for through balls that rebounds and felt organic and scripted. The voice samples that they used in this game were fantastic as well. Even with the limited storage to the Super Nintendo cartridge, the enthusiastic and slightly robotic announcer gave the game a TV broadcast energy that made every goal feel like a World Cup final. The game featured different pitch conditions and weather effects. You could play in a sunny afternoon, a rainy evening, or even tackle a snowy pitch where the ball would move differently and players would slide further during tackles. It wasn't just a visual change, it forced you to adapt your playstyle. The scenario mode was the clutch of the 90s. This game would drop you into the final few minutes of real-life inspired match, like being 2-0 down against Italy with 5 minutes left, and challenged you to turn the result around. It provided a real level of tension and a one-more-try gameplay that kept players hooked for months. International Superstar Soccer Deluxe is a masterclass in gameplay over branding. It proved that you don't need the official FIFA license if you had the best mechanics in the world. It's fast, incredibly deep for a 16-bit game, and possesses a weight to the movement that makes every goal feel earned. Super Tennis. While it was a launch day window title, it remains one of the most mechanically perfect sports games on the system. It didn't need flashy gimmicks or licensed superstars. It relied on the Super Nintendo's Mode 7 hardware to create a 3D perspective that fundamentally changed how we played sports games at home. Super Tennis is a simple, vibrant tennis sim featuring 20 players, 10 male, 10 female, each with their own strengths. Some are service specialists, some are hard hitters or fast runners. By using the Super Nintendo's ability to rotate and scale the background, the court actually recedes into the distance. This gave players a true sense of depth, making it possible to judge the height and speed of the ball in the way the old 2D flat tennis games couldn't do. You've got Exhibition Mode, a Deep Circuit Mode, the RPG Light Career Mode, and arguably the best two-player doubles mode of the 16-bit era. Super Tennis is one of those easy-to-learn, impossible-to-master games, and it's all about the physics of the court. Unlike simpler tennis games, Super Tennis mapped different shots to every face button on the Super Nintendo controller. You had a flat shot, a topspin shot, a slice, and a lob. Learning when to use a slice to slow a game down versus a topspin to catch the baseline was the difference between a rookie and a pro. The game features 3 distinct court types: hard, lawn, and clay. These aren't just cosmetic changes. On a grass court, the ball skids and stays low. On a clay court, the ball bounces high and slows down significantly. And this forced you to change your timing and strategy based on where the tournament was held. One of the most satisfying moves in the game is the overhead smash. If a ball is lobbed over your head, you can actually hit a button to jump into the air and spike it back down. It was one of the first tennis games to make the vertical space of the court feel relevant. The circuit mode here was also surprisingly deep for 1991. You earned different points across different tournaments to climb the world rankings. It gave the game an incredible amount of longevity as you managed your performance across an entire season to reach number 1 spot. Despite the simple sprites, the game had a ton of charm. Players will throw their rackets in frustration after a loss, wipe their brow or look up into the sky. The chair umpire actually calls the score with a visualized voice, and the sounds of the ball hitting the racket, a crisp satisfying thwack, is one of the most iconic sound effects in Super Nintendo history. Doubles mode in Super Tennis is legendary. Because the Mode 7 perspective is so clear, playing with a friend against a CPU or 2v2 required genuine teamwork. You had to cover the net while your partner guarded the baseline, leading to some of the most intense couch play rallies of the 90s. Super Tennis is the Tetris of sports games. It's a perfect loop of movement and timing that never gets old. It does lack the attitude of the later 90s sports games, but replaces it with a bright, sunny and incredibly precise simulation of the sport that feels snappy and responsive today. WWF Royal Rumble. Now, some of you could say this isn't a sports game, it's a wrestling game. It's sports entertainment, baby. So, yeah. And oddly enough, it's the Royal Rumble this weekend. So I timed that beautifully. Let me know in the comments who you think is going to win. I think it's going to be Braun Breaker. I think he's going to win the Royal Rumble. Obviously, my boy Drew McIntyre is not in the Royal Rumble, but we all know he is the GOAT. In my opinion, he's the GOAT. I absolutely love Drew. He is an absolute menace. Sorry, going on a tangent. The Royal Rumble introduced the fast-paced grapple system that defined the arcade wrestler for years. It captured the peak of the New Generation era, featuring a legendary roster from The Undertaker and Bret the Hitman Hart to Razor Ramon and Shawn Michaels. The Royal Rumble is a sequel to the Super WrestleMania games. It features 12 superstars with slight variations between the Super Nintendo and Mega Drive roster, battling in singles, tag team, and the titular Royal Rumble match. Instead of just punching until someone falls, you can lock up. Once locked, you have to mash buttons faster than your opponent to win the struggle and execute a move. And for the first time, you could venture outside the ring, grab chairs, or even rake the eyes and low blow the opponent when the ref wasn't looking. Royal Rumble isn't just a sports game, it's a high-energy button masher that perfectly simulates the drama of the squared circle. The grapple system created a physical intensity between players. There's no stamina bar, just your own thumb speed. When you lock up with a friend, it becomes a literal test of strength. Winning that struggle to land a massive suplex or power driver felt like a genuine athletic achievement. And let's be honest, we all came here for the finishes. Every character had their own iconic finishing maneuver. Pulling off a sharpshooter with Bret Hart or the tombstone power driver with Undertaker required specific button combos and provided a massive damage boost, making the hunt for the finish at the core of the strategy. The Royal Rumble match itself was a technical feat for the Super Nintendo. It managed to keep the action fluid even as the wrestlers were constantly entering the ring. The strategy shifted from draining health to positioning. You had to wear your opponent down and then whip them towards the rope to dump them over the top. The tension of being the number 1 entrant and trying to survive all 12 men was unmatched. The game added a layer of heel psychology. You could accidentally knock down the referee, and while he was dizzy crawling on the mat, the rules were out the window. You could use illegal chokeholds or eye gouges that would normally get you disqualified, adding a hilarious layer of mischief to multiplayer matches. The Super Nintendo version utilised the console's colour depth to make the wrestlers look larger than life action figures. The sprites were beefy, the colours of the flashy 90s gear like HBK's mirrors or Macho Man neon tassels were vivid, and the ring felt like a bright televised stage. The wrestlers weren't just skin swaps either. Lex Luger felt like heavy and powerful, while the 1-2-3 Kid on the Super Nintendo version was faster and more agile. This variety meant you had to change your mashing rhythm and spacing depending on who you were facing. WWF Royal Rumble is the peak of 16-bit arcade wrestling. It didn't try to be a deep simulation, it tried to be a loud, sweaty, competitive blast. It's the game that turned many 90s kids into lifelong fans, providing the perfect platform for local multiplayer rivalries that lasted long after the bell. And finally, Ken Griffey Jr.'s Major League Baseball. Now, while I admit I think baseball is absolutely shit, I know some of you are going to hate me for that. I prefer a good leisurely game of cricket. And if you're Australian, shut up. Shut up. We don't talk about cricket anymore. But I just think watching baseball is crap. But playing the games, however, completely different. While the baseball games felt like a slow, methodical simulations, Griffey, as it's affectionately known, felt like a backyard game of home run derby. It combined a breezy arcade pace with a deep love of the sport, becoming one of the best-selling and most beloved titles on the system. The game featured all 28 real MLB teams and their authentic stadiums. To get round the lack of player names, Nintendo gave the teams hilarious themed rosters. The Yankees featured legendary monsters, Frankenstein. The Mariners featured Nintendo employees, and other teams were filled with movie stars or historical figures. It utilised a batter pitch dual perspective that focused on timing and placement, making it incredibly accessible for anyone to pick up and play. The game is the perfect game because it prioritizes the feeling of baseball over the spreadsheets of the sport. The animation for Ken Griffey's swing is a work of art. Nintendo captured his iconic smooth left-handed follow-through perfectly. When you connect for a home run with Griffey, the screen shakes, the going, gone voice clip triggers, and the satisfaction is immense. It made the kid feel like a true superhero. Pitching wasn't just about pressing a button either. You could move the ball mid-flight using the D-pad, creating nasty curves or fastballs that moved the last second. This created a high-level psychological game between players. Guessing whether your friend was going to throw a sinker or a heater kept every at-bat tense. Before practice modes were standard, Griffey's home run derby was the main event for many. It was pure distilled dopamine. You could pick your favourite power hitter and see how many balls you could launch out of the park. The bright colourful graphics made the ball look like a comet as it cleared the fences. When a ball was hit into the gap, the game would switch into a wide-angle view of the field. The fielding was snappy and responsive, and you could dive for catches, climb the wall to rob a home run, and fire bullet throws to home plate. It felt more like an action game than a sports sim. And during the 16-bit limitations, the game did a fantastic job making the stadiums feel distinct. From the green monster at Fenway to the waterfalls at Kauffman Stadium, the attention to detail make you feel like you're on a cross-country baseball road trip. The crowd noise and digitalized charge fanfares added to the big league energy. The game featured a battery pack save that allowed you to play through a full 162 game season. That's ridiculous. It tracked your home run, RBIs, and ERA, adding you a sense of ownership over your team. The game featured a battery pack save that allowed you to play through a full 162 game season. Hang on, they can't play 162 games this season. Surely. Is that just me? 162? No, surely that's everybody. That's every team. No. You'd be dead if I played 162 games in the season. My legs would die. Regardless, the game tracked your home runs, RBIs, and ERA, giving you a sense of ownership over your team. Even with the fake names, you find yourself getting attached to your star pitcher or your cleanup hitter. Ken Griffey's Major League Baseball is the comfort food of sports games. It's sunny, optimistic, and incredibly fun to play. It stripped away the boredom of the sport and left behind the highlights, the crack of the bat, the dive and catch, and the thrill of the walk-off home run. And that's it. Some of the best sports games for the Super Nintendo. Let me know what you think of this list in the comments. And as I said at the beginning, please hit that like button because that is what helps the channel grow. I'll see you all in a few days for the video. My name's been Danny. Take care of yourself. Bye bye.